episode of Way Overthinking It. I'm Sean,
I'm Paul, and
and
this is
he,
the dose, the dose.
Deuce. That's right, number two. That means we've
I
survived.
love it.
We've
We
made it.
did. We got through the first one.
Is it official if we do two?
I think we're officially a podcast now.
Really?
Because one, you're just playing around, right?
Right.
I mean,
And
I've
it,
listened to podcasts that I was already in on too.
you're good.
I'm okay with it.
I say five.
You
I
know.
say we make it five. Like if we make
All
it
right.
five, then it's a
Well,
real thing.
then we can like. I mean, maybe then we'll market it. Who knows? Who knows
Sure.
what's out there?
If you make it,
You know.
if you make it five, and if you make it
Yeah.
10, we'll get you a free T-shirt. The Way
If you can
Overthinking It
tell
T-shirt.
us
Yeah, if
everything
you
about each first 10 episodes,
you have to pass you
you've
have to
proved us.
pass an exam, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you pass the Way Overthinking It 10 episode exam, we will my daughter will custom make you a Way Overthinking It T-shirt, and
We'll
it'll
create
come
a,
your
yeah,
way.
the online
And
quiz you have to
right,
pass.
it'll be great. Okay, well, so how are things in Texas? Baseball
Things are
games are still
good.
a thing.
So this is a very Texan thing to do right now, but
Uh-oh.
it's actually today was the hottest day of the year so far. Hit like
Oh,
95, and it was gross heat, just muggy. And yet it is now 10 o'clock at night, and I am wearing a sweatshirt because in Texas, what we do is we turn up the AC really high.
oh,
And
geez.
so when we have this hot weather, because like spring was glorious for the 2 weeks we had it, and now we're
Sure.
already in summer, and so
Right.
it's air conditioning time. And
Oh,
so I'm in my sweatshirt
wow.
enjoying the inside, but then I let the dog out, and it's just like wave of it's like a microwave hits my face. It's
Serious.
it's
That's
wild.
we
But
get
other than that,
snow
Texas is pretty good.
we get snow on Saturday.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we get snow on Saturday.
Wow.
So, and then
Wow.
after Saturday, here in the great Northwest, the unpredictable weather that it is, after Saturday, we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not a cloud in the sky and
Uh-huh.
60 degrees, 60 plus degrees. So I decided that basically Sunday through Monday, I'm just going to be on my boat. I bought a boat. I bought a
That's
boat
no
because,
way. That's awesome.
yeah, well, the government decided to give me money that I didn't need or
Oh yeah,
ask
yeah.
for,
I agree. Yeah.
So I told my
That's good.
wife, I said, well, I'm going to buy a boat.
I love
So
it.
I did.
You didn't buy Bitcoin? You like everybody else?
No. I kind of I saw where that was going. I saw the writing on the wall. The push and dumps that are happening right now at Bitcoin is a little bit. It's a little scary
It is
for those
scary.
who are die hard Bitcoin people. It's an interesting time because there's no predictability. All of the
Yeah.
Fibonacci triangles are
Oh man.
failing miserably. So it's yeah. So no, I didn't buy Bitcoin. I bought a boat, and I'm going to be on it for the next 5 days, just
That's
sitting on it.
glorious.
Once my daughter plays soccer in the snow on Saturday.
I
So
would
that's
take
it.
sunny and 60 though over the 95
Hmm.
muggy humidity in April.
I
I
don't
really
know.
would.
I
I
don't know.
like the adjustment. Well, that's because you're just in it.
Yeah.
You haven't experienced the wave, the wall of heat.
Right.
It's
Right.
rough. It's
Right.
intense. And
Right.
then there's the
No.
Texans who love it, who just
Yeah.
they can't wait. This is the day when they were all out, and I was just like, "You people are crazy."
Right.
I
It's
still have
it.
that Californian thing in me. I like moderate temperatures.
Well, and it's the humidity, right? That's what you guys deal with.
That's what kills me. Yeah,
Right.
it's not so much
Right.
the heat; it's the humidity. Yeah,
Right.
it's
Well,
rough.
we had an interesting week. For those of you who are just listening,
Hmm.
I'm wearing my special shirt today. It's a shirt that I wear every once in a while. It says defund the media, and it's funny when I wear it in town, here in Washington, which is obviously, as you know, Seattle's pretty progressive, and we live in the outskirts of Seattle, but still, it's
Hmm.
pretty progressive. But it's funny because when I wear this shirt out and about, I get head nods like, "Ooh, I wish I
The
was wearing
knowing
that shirt."
winks.
Right? Yes, the
No,
knowing
they don't
winks
want to be
everywhere.
too loud though because they're all
Yeah,
afraid of each other.
right.
Real
It's the
quick, that
knowing
makes
winks.
me think
It's the
though.
knowing winks and the non. I heard today is there's because they call people here, people who don't wear masks, which I've already said I wear masks where I need to because I don't
Hmm.
really need to cause a fuss. But they took a survey of people who wear masks, and they realized that most people around here are wearing masks because they just don't want to get any static, because
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
there
for
it's
sure.
not because they even really believe in the science anymore, except for So they say maskers and anti-maskers, and somebody said, no, there's no such thing as an anti-masker. There's just maskers and normal people. It
I
was
agree.
like,
I mean, that makes sense to me. So I wanted to ask you, being in progressive Seattle,
yes.
I is it kind of the thing where so speaking of the media and the environment have created this pressure from the progressive side that makes you think it's even more progressive than maybe it actually is by the numbers? Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, no, it is blatantly obvious that it is a vocal minority.
Ah, okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's not even honestly, it's not even I was going to say hideable. That's not the right way to say it. It's just
yeah.
it's out in the open that it's literally the
Hmm.
vocal minority. Because we actually have communities. If they understood what is actually happening, and I was actually telling my brother
Hmm.
this week. We were talking about it because we were talking about vaccines and whatnot, and I said if if the region understood how many hundreds of thousands of people are actually meeting in churches maskless, and I'm not
Sure.
endorsing one way or another, I'm
Yeah.
just saying if the region actually understood what was going on here, uh, they would go berserk. But they just don't know, because once everyone gets out of church or gets out of
Yeah.
their family, I mean, the idea that we get permission to do a barbecue on the 4th of July, I was like, now
I love
isn't
that.
that ironic that we're being given permission to meet on a day that celebrates independence? Hmm.
Yeah, that's
That's
so funny.
that's that's kind of odd. And I'm not trying to get into your rant about that. I'm just saying. So it's really really interesting here. Yeah, it is. It's a vocal minority,
Hmm.
and I think the majority of people here in the Northwest, anyway, just kind of live in that. I just don't want to hear about it. But there's a little
Sure.
town not too far away called Enumclaw, um, and basically their COVID doesn't doesn't exist. Their caseload, I mean, it's not a small town. It's actually a
Yeah.
decent sized town, but their caseload is not that much. Their stores and
Yeah.
restaurants, they don't hassle you about masks. There's like one coffee shop that's known for hassling you about masks, and that's it. So the maskers run to that coffee shop like it's the only safe haven in town.
That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, but it is. So it's kind of the media pushing this narrative, which is kind of what I was wanted to talk about this week was just, it's
Yeah.
interesting to me um, how much you don't need to substantiate your facts anymore. And it was like
Oh,
it,
totally.
it, it was like when we were talking about last week about how you could have this massively overblown headline and then find out in the basement somewhere down in the article that it's like one person.
Yeah.
I read even a couple more of those this week. I wish I had them. I would maybe next week I'll post them up. But it really was talking about variance and things like this, and then basically none of those things that they were attributing that it's fearful that this could happen in the United States, and then it was something to the degree of, but that actually hasn't happened here yet.
Yeah.
You know, so it was
That's how it
like
always is.
this is what's
Yeah, the
happening, and this is
doomsday
what
stuff.
could happen, and I was like, man, if there was ever a quote that should be put in quotes and have words sectionalized in quotes and under it, it's
Yeah.
just it's kind of crazy how I guess what bothers me about it, and again, we try to stay hopeful. We're going to stay hopeful. I
Yes.
so the hopeful side,
And
we'll
we'll
end
say
hopeful,
we'll
and
always
we'll
end
always
on
end
the
hopeful.
hopeful note.
But I just
Yeah.
find what bothers me about it is how much we don't uh, address it.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think we say fake news and da 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 instead of saying having which is what we like to do. Here at Way Overthinking It is we like to deep dive and say,
Hmm.
no, this is why this isn't true. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
and I wish if people would just do that, you know, that it really would, put. It's funny though, especially in social media, you could say you could completely expose something as false and still get fact checked.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. Especially on Facebook's, I think, the worst. I see
Right.
the most ridiculous things fact checked on Facebook, or I posted things like memes, like straight up jokes I've posted, and they have fact checked me on them. And it's like,
Right.
wow, literally,
Right.
like there's no sense of humor anymore. Somebody I was listening to, and I might have even said this last week, but somebody I was listening to has basically said that the left has killed humor. Like humor is now dead.
Right.
So you
Right.
can't even joke
Well, it's
about stuff.
interesting because we're actually starting to see uh, what it's like unchecked cancel culture is doing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Cancel culture
Well,
is now, they're running out of conservatives to cancel.
they start eating their own.
Right. And now they're like,
Hmm.
they're it's cancel culture is a virus of its own. And so now all of a
Yeah.
sudden, you're seeing the left is starting to,
Yep.
get, I mean, you have journalists getting kicked out of Vogue,
Hmm.
Washington Post,
Yeah.
I mean, just, and it's like, what? What are you
Oh
talking
yeah.
about? First up, I think it was the lady who got kicked out of Teen Vogue. It was something she did when she was like 17 or something like that.
Something she
Six,
tweeted when she was
yeah,
a
tweeted
teenager.
16, 17. I'm like,
Yeah, they went back.
and I'm thinking to myself, well, you were a big fan of cancer culture the week before, I'm sure, and now
Yep.
all of
Oh,
a
for
sudden
sure. Yeah.
it's
No,
just
it's
crazy.
interesting. I listen to a lot of pop culture, sports podcasts, all that, and they're all having conversations about it too. Like it's like trying
Right.
to worry them and creep up. And I was actually talking to Summer, my wife, about this the other day. That I was listening to a podcast, and it's funny because you can tell the difference in the progressives who've lived life. So they're a little older. They're like in their 40s, and
Right,
they
right.
grew up in the 90s
100%.
maybe, or 80s. And so they still like have some common sense thoughts, even though they're supporting a lot of this, or at least kind of getting behind it. But then there's like the newer, the younger ones who they haven't had a job yet. They've kind of grown up in this 2000s economy where less young people are working, more of them are living at their parents' house longer,
Right,
more
right,
online. Like a lot of their interactions are social media instead of in person. They're not having adventures in real life. And those are the people who are like ravenously into the cancel culture. And I think
right.
the older progressives are starting to be like, this is even scary for us. Like they were talking about how like nobody's even allowed to make a mistake anymore, and how
Right,
it's kind of concerning. Now, obviously, it only became a concern to them when some progressive got canceled, not when
right,
all the
right.
hundreds of thousands of conservatives were canceled beforehand. But now they're
Then it was
starting to see
fine, but
like
now,
there's an
yeah,
issue.
it's interesting to see how many things in the in progressive culture um, kind of runs out of you run out of territory, I guess. You run
Yeah,
out of those
totally.
two, you run out of enemies in a way. I mean, they'll
Hmm.
always, but it was interesting because I was talking to a friend of mine about uh, like how like the housing market, things we're seeing
Yeah.
right now that are just it's really really strange because it's these policies right now that are we're in a system that right now is basically incentivizing people to stay home and not work.
Hmm.
And a lot of I see millennial friends, they're like, yes, this is a great idea. We should do this. Do you realize? I'm like, you realize in this system, you're never going to own a home.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
But they're
houses
okay.
are
Some of them are okay with that,
yeah, and that's probably
you
true. But
know?
I mean, but a lot of them, the young families that are like, hey,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm a hip thinker, da, da,
Yeah.
da, da, they realize that the government is now incentivizing people to stay home, to
Hmm.
stay on unemployment. So they're taking a demographic of people who are not likely to get sick. If they do get sick,
Yeah.
they're not likely to be hospitalized. So they're incentivizing them to stay home. So what that's doing is it's making two things that are happening really interesting right now. So here's a little deviation from what we were talking about, but it's kind of like it kind of fits because it's just nonsensical lies that come back and just burn you. Two things are happening
Hmm.
right now. We're seeing inflation go out of control, but they're happening because of
Yeah.
policies and ideologies that are saying, no, this is the right thing. Everyone needs to stay home. Everyone needs to just, stay safe. Don't worry, we're going to keep giving you money. What does that do? That makes it more expensive for employers to hire people because now they
Hmm.
have to raise their wage costs to get
Yeah.
someone to get off that couch and say they're going to
Oh
be
yeah.
able to pay more. So then what happens is you've got that. So you have higher wages because I know guys who own construction companies. It's crazy expensive now all of a sudden for them to hire employees. So
Hmm.
you've got that. Plus, then what you have is ridiculous low interest rates. So you have all
Yeah.
these people buying $300,000 and $400,000 homes for $600,000. cash.
Yeah.
And 1 in 5 of those houses is actually being purchased by wealthy banks and
Yeah.
investment groups. So all of a sudden, you have, a stick of lumber that was $3 is now all of a sudden $5. So the price of
Hmm.
building a house is going up. The price of buying a house is going up. And all of a
Sure.
sudden, the milk, bread, and gasoline are now all of a sudden going up. So
Oh
now
yeah.
those people that are living on unemployment are getting priced out of everything. And it's
Hmm.
like this policy and this mindset is actually coming back to bite you,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's being used to feed, right, your your political ideology that this is a good thing, but it's
Hmm.
not.
No.
It's actually destroying your livelihood in the next, 5 to 10 years. You just don't see it coming yet. It's
Totally.
really, really interesting how that, I mean, it makes sense. I'm just That's
Oh,
one of the things
all of
I'm
it makes
noticing
sense.
right now.
Absolutely.
How and the media perpetuates all of this, like,
Hmm.
oh, this is so good. I'm like, what's good about it?
Yeah, well, they villainize you if you're like going to work. They talk to like the media builds up the people staying home as if they're the heroes because they
Right.
are not spreading it. And meanwhile, like all these people getting mad at others for working and everything, it's like, well, where do you think your food comes from? Where do you
Right.
think things are
Right.
manufactured? Like there are people who can't work. Those are the true essential workers, by the way, not
Right.
McDonald's drive-through,
Right.
which was
Well, I
left
mean,
open, or Walmart.
they're saying, it teachers can't go back to school, right?
Yeah.
Los Angeles County, a couple
Oh
other
yeah.
counties, they can't go back to school. Teachers unions won't let them go back to school. But but we're saying they're essential workers,
Hmm.
and I'm like, well, okay, you can't go to school because of A, B, and C, but
Oh
the
yeah.
guy who bags your groceries or gal who bags your groceries, they managed
Hmm.
a way to get there.
Yeah.
I mean,
And,
even
they're
Starbucks,
making. Oh
and
yeah.
they're
And
making
they.
less than you are, right?
Oh yeah. Those teachers, I guarantee you, most of them have not lost their salaries or
Right.
benefits. They're all state. But I mean, that's a whole different thing. But
Yes.
bringing it back to the media, though, it's really interesting today about manipulation of media. I mean, this is great though. That's why we do this,
Right.
and we can cover all these things and see where
We
it
can
goes.
cover. We're spider veining here. Right?
But did you see this week about the 60 Minutes thing with DeSantis?
Yes.
Where,
Yes.
yeah,
Case
that's
and point
a
right
great
there.
example. And he got busted,
60
which I
seconds of
love.
lying.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. It was insane. And remember when they did that to Trump before and he
Right.
just aired the whole thing, like
Right.
unedited?
That They all just need, basically every interview any conservative needs to
Yeah.
do right now. They need to have a camera going.
So there is a counter to it now, which is good because people record stuff now on their phones. They get the raw footage, Twitter, even before people get shut down.
Right.
But I was listening to somebody the other day, and I agree with this. Is that it used to be three networks controlled everything, all the
Right.
information that got to us
Right.
through the media. Now it's impossible to hide everything as long as you're curious enough to go find it because they'll keep banning you on platforms, but the internet at least has made it so information keeps getting out there.
Right. Right.
And then speaking with the defund the media, not only are they canceling their own, but they're running out of funds. CNN's
Sure.
ratings are way down. You see,
Sure.
Huffington Post just laid off
Yeah.
like a ton of its employees. They're not the only one. Vice is almost bankrupt. So a lot of these progressive outlets, and I'm sure the conservative ones are as well. I think people in general are just trusting news less, whether it's conservative
Sure.
or progressive.
Sure.
But that is happening. What's really interesting to see though is that who the people that keep watching them, are they ever like, what is it going to take to get that to break through that? Because the people who are stopping watching now are the people who just they wanted that dopamine drip of Trump hate,
Right. Right.
and it's gone now. And so all these
But
places are
yet they
feeling that.
keep recycling Trump. You notice? I mean,
Well, they
the,
need to
their
for their own
lead is all
survival.
Trump's. Donald Trump did
Yeah,
that. I'm like, who's president?
yeah. But it makes me. I mean, so not my hope is that not only are a lot of these people just off of it because they're not getting that Trump hate anymore and they want to go live
Right.
life, but maybe a lot of them too realize they were lied to, that Trump was this evil dictator when he stepped down and
Right.
actually did a peaceful
Right.
transition. of power. And now, like, the Biden stuff is not going so well. So maybe there's hope there that these people are
Right.
actually starting to distrust the media.
I think it comes down
So,
to a lot of, you're seeing that the motive is far more financial and bottom line than it is ideologues.
oh, 100%.
It's, I just think, some of
At
them are
least
like,
in those seats. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I'm
Hmm.
not really an ideologue, but I play one on television,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
this sensationalism, and we probably pick on CNN a lot, because Brian Seltzer, that guy, um, I mean, I could see it if the price was right. He would be on Fox or Newsmax tomorrow,
Yeah.
because because the arguments that he makes are so
Yeah.
disingenuous. I mean, they're just
Oh,
so
yeah.
easy to pick apart. Now, like a Don Lemon
Yeah.
and
Lamone.
Don Lemon, or
Cuomo,
what's this,
Chris
Chris
Cuomo.
Cuomo.
Oh, my God.
They're being true to who they are. They're
I don't know,
and
man. I saw some footage of Lamone about 10 years ago when he was saying some stuff that's completely counter to what he's saying now in
Well,
a couple
yeah, and that
places,
could be, that could
you
be, but
know.
it sounds like, I mean, when he puts up his genuine disgust and kind of disdain
Mhm.
for conservatism seems pretty real, uh,
I
and
wonder, though, is it a disgust of conservatism or is it a disgust of basically the plebeians, if you want to say it in a certain way, like
yeah,
the lesser people? Like, I'm an elite, and whatever I say is true, and so whatever you're running counter to my narrative I'm giving you right now, that's
right,
disgusting because you should be trusting
right.
me. So
You should,
that's what
yeah,
I
that's
wonder.
true.
I do think there are some true blues, like Rachel Maddow
Yeah,
or Keith Olbermann, the ones
he's
who can't
nuts. I don't know
help.
what he is.
He's insane. He's crazy, is what he is. But it's the
Well, no,
ones
and
who
that's
keep
yeah,
tweeting and
MSNBC.
on their own time,
Right.
But
The MSNBC and the CNN, that's what I'm saying. It's two
yes,
different worlds. MSNBC, you know who you get. They've committed
yes,
to the bit, and they don't really
yeah,
hire anyone. And not only are they maybe left leaning progressive, but they're for the most part intellectuals. The only person that I
mhm.
actually see on MSNBC that is just a dizzying quandary of what in the world is going on there is Joe Scarborough.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well,
because it's
the,
like,
apparently he's
what.
supposed to be a Republican, but
Yeah, he was. I mean, and Morning Joe was like my jam. Used to be my jam. I woke up, I watched Morning Joe. I
are
remember
you
the one of my
serious?
my
That's
favorite things
hilarious.
about being in Hawaii was Morning Joe started at like 5 or 6 o'clock Eastern, and I was in Hawaii, and I was able to start watching Morning Joe at midnight. I was
Hmm.
like, this is awesome. My
Oh
wife's like,
man.
come to bed, but I love Morning Joe, and but he I think when he got TDS really bad,
Oh yeah.
and once TDS set in, it nothing mattered anymore. And it's the same thing
No.
with the Ana Navarros of the world.
Yeah.
That's where I get really challenged, is because some of these people have a hard time. Uh, I, I see them abandoning their roots so much that it
Hmm.
becomes blatantly obvious. Like right now, Ann Coulter, no one knows who she is. If
No.
you listen to Ann Coulter
Yeah.
tweet, I'm like, I don't think you know. I'm not sure if you have your phone right now.
Well, you know what she's trying to be? She's trying to say, like, I'm, she's doing this weird thing that barely anybody else has done. In fact, I don't know if anybody else has tried it. When a lot of these other people started hating Trump, they started actually drifting left and became either center left or far
Right,
left. They just,
right,
some of them just dove all in.
right,
And then there's Coulter, who is like, I'm going to try to prove to you that I'm more conservative, that I'm more neocon,
right,
that I'm more, and just went into her own little place. That even us on the center right and who understand, like, even the far right people are kind of
right.
like, what are you doing over there,
Where
man?
are you?
Like,
You've
you
invented
used
your
to have a
own. Yeah,
voice that was worth
yeah,
listening to.
yeah. She's like gone.
Some of her books, her early books, are some of them are very good. She's a lawyer and she'd
Right,
write out these amazing cases.
right,
Her early stuff before she became the walking meme.
right.
You
She's
know,
kind of like a Lincoln Project, 2X. It's just really
yeah,
weird. She's
yeah.
gone. to this kind of conspiratorial, slap down. Um,
She just fires bombs at everybody.
yeah, and it's like,
And
let's see what sticks.
but so my thing is, it's like with let's talk about to CNN, and Scarborough is a great example, even though he's MSNBC. I think the problem is not so much the hardcore progressives, because they're there, but they've always been there. It's this elite thing, this elitist thing that, like, some of these people, like you were talking about, lost their roots. But I think what happened is, once they became successful and in this media place, they entered this elitism zone, and now
Right,
all of a sudden it was like, oh, even up here, like, we left and right, whatever, it all just became kind of a game, and they're all like
right,
friends actually behind the scenes, and it really
right,
became us versus you guys.
right,
And then when Trump was basically one of us, and so to speak, not really, but you know what I
right,
mean, not one of them, I should say. He's just not one of them. But he was the first president to not be one of them in a very long time, and
right,
they hated him for it, and that's what turned everything. And it was more of this elite, because you see, like, the Lincoln Project Republicans basically becoming full blown liberal Democrats. Like, we're not
right,
talking them supporting a centrist Democrat, say like
right.
an old, like a John F. Kennedy. No, we're talking about Joe Biden, who's gone full left with Kamala Harris left, and they're like, no,
Right,
we're cool with it just to get rid of Trump. That tells me, like, they never had conviction in the first place. It's a
right. Well,
game being played.
if you look at, and I mean, again, I'm not a huge Fox News fan, so I can't really get too
Yeah.
excited. But here's the thing: if you look at, like, their shows like The Five on Fox News, Juan
Yeah.
Williams is very much committed to his principles. I
Yeah.
respect Juan Williams because he is committed to the progressive belief
Hmm.
system. He's in it.
Yeah.
He defends it. He speaks to it. MSNBC, if you're a considered conservative on MSNBC, you're like Nicole Wallace or Steve Schmidt. And you're like, you're not
Or
even a rhino. You're like a dino. Like, who are you? It's so weird.
like David Brooks from the New York
Yeah,
Times, the
it's
token
like,
conservative.
yes, it's like you're not even a token. I just don't know
Yeah.
what I listen to Nicole Wallace and I'm like, you were what? Like,
Yeah.
you're a plant. It's like, I
Yeah.
feel like it's like watching spies come out of their
Hmm.
30-year covert operation. It's like, now I can
Yeah.
be who I was all along. Or
Exactly.
Michael
Yeah.
Steele. Michael Steele?
Hmm.
You were the
Oh,
head of the
RNC.
RNC?
Yeah, that's
How
insane.
in the world were you ever the head of the
It,
RNC? I'm like,
um,
it's like,
yeah.
so part of me, again, and we said it last week, Donald
Hmm.
Trump, someone should have taken the band's phone away. That's all I'm saying. But in a way, it was like he was chemo.
Yeah. Oh,
He
yeah.
was chemo to the
He
body. And all of a sudden,
absolutely.
you just saw all of these people who were just absolutely not. And
Yeah.
some of you listening right now, you might disagree and say, well, no, what it is, it's driving out the true conservatives. I would
Hmm.
disagree with you 100%. And this is why I would disagree with you, because
Hmm.
I believe the conservative tent is far bigger.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have room in the conservative tent to take
Sure.
people like myself who are more center right.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
have room in the conservative tent to even take people who are more center left, but might call themselves fiscal conservatives, or might even call
Sure.
themselves, social conservatives and fiscal progressives, or
Hmm.
just, or those who swing, much farther right. And then we
Yeah.
have the far, 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 far crazy right, and we box them up and we just don't even listen to them. But we have room to have this discussion. That doesn't exist in the in the left, especially in the left media.
No.
There, I
No.
I have yet to see a repeat conservative in mainstream media that is not ridiculed during the piece.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Well, like, I think even worse is the lack of free thinkers allowed, because
Hmm.
even though the progressives, I like the only, this is just off the top of my head, and I'm like you, I'm not a Fox News guy. I can't even remember the last time I watched Fox News. I occasionally will watch a Tucker segment on YouTube, but I haven't watched it. I actually sat down and watched Fox News in forever. And I don't really watch any of these things. I just kind of pay attention to what's going on
Sure,
in the narrative, and I see these
sure.
people posting on Twitter and stuff. Off the top of my head, the only like progressive I can think who's a true free thinker in the media right now is like Bill Maher, and he just hosts his own show, and
Bill Maher,
he's
right?
Bill
Maher,
Maher,
you call
yeah, and he's
Maher,
yeah,
Mauer. You're
Maher, whatever.
Canadian. It's
Sorry,
that
sorry,
Texas accent.
sorry, Bill,
It's good. It's
sorry,
Texas
Bill
accent.
Maher.
Bill Mauer. Bill
but
Mauer. I
but he's
like
a
that
free
guy.
thinker, and so
No, for sure.
occasionally he's, and I like listening to him because of that.
Yeah.
Not often, but sometimes. And then you got like Tucker Carlson on the right, who's he's not a hardcore far right. I don't care what people paint him as. He's very
Right.
center right.
Right.
But what it comes down to, I still think, is like the media is just controlled like this elitist game. Michael Steele's such a good example of that. I mean, literally ran the RNC, the Republican National Convention, and the whole thing. Like that's
So
where
true.
he was controlling all the funds, trying to get George Bush elected and John McCain elected, and like literally the head of the party from the not the political side, but the feet on the ground side.
Yeah.
And literally, like you listen to him now, you would be like, you don't even sound like a center Democrat. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and
Do
it's
you
just,
think a solid centrist media would? Because I can't think of one. That's why I'm saying. Do you think a
hmm
solid cable, right?
hmm
Local channel news is different.
yeah,
Local channel does
sure.
they have to play
hmm
it down the middle. They may have a bent, but very,
Yeah.
very rarely does that bent find its way out that much,
hmm
because local ratings are hard to grab anyway, so they try to
Oh,
keep
yeah,
everyone happy.
totally.
But in the cable news world, I mean, like things that are rushing to the surface again are like the Newsmax and the OANs now. Although OAN is
Yeah.
kind of fading now, but I mean the Newsmaxes and
Yeah.
whatnot. But they're totally right leaning.
Yeah.
There isn't any. I think there we did kind of go through this last year where independent journalism's,
hmm
the Veritas's, the Tim Pools,
Yeah. You
um,
mean last
you know,
episode, not last year?
yeah, the last,
Feels
but
like a year ago.
we see all of these kind of independent journ, but even
hmm
those, like but he's not mainstream, but I like we've talked about Tim Pool in the past,
Yeah.
and he's
I mean, he might
he's
as well
pretty
be. He
narrow,
gets more ratings than
right?
CNN now.
Yeah, I mean, so
He
I don't know. What do you think? Do you think like a straight down the
well,
middle
there's
network would even
definitely
survive today?
survive is a good question. I would say yes, but only in one way. I think the only way they as a network would survive is if they rotated a right person and a left person for an hour, and then a right person and a left person, and then it
Mm,
had maybe one or two shows, kind of like the Five, where it was sprinkled in them
right,
fighting each other. I think that's the
right.
only way you can do it.
The
And
old Hannity
unfortunately,
and Combs format.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think a network could survive like that.
Right.
But here's the problem: I don't think any network would
Risk
have
it.
the guts to do it,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't think well, from what I've seen on the progressive side of media personalities, I don't I don't think very many of them at all would join it. Um,
Right.
and they're
Unless
gonna
the money
get
was there.
money does talk, but you know what the
Yeah.
funny thing is if the because here's the thing, anything right now that's even centrist will be labeled uh, alt right or far
Alt
right,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's
so
true.
it'll be
Dave
labeled
Rubin
that,
is a
and so
centrist, and they call him. He's
exactly,
absolutely Dave Rubin's perfectly. Yeah. That's so. God,
yeah.
it's so true. You're right.
And so because that, like these people would make a big morality stand about not going. Like
Right.
I feel like right now, even the centrist people, the center, like real centers, barely lean left or right, just real centered people, say like a Joe Rogan. I think him and Tim Pool are probably the most centered people I know. Although I think, even though Tim Pool calls himself a liberal now, I feel like his politics have really shifted, and he's just not willing to shift his identification yet, just by listening to him.
I think.
But
Well, I think it's. Yeah. I think you're right. I think. Well, I think a lot of them being forced into it.
hmm
I think,
no, for sure.
and that's the challenge. Is I don't. I don't like politics that make you choose.
I agree.
Like you're
Yeah,
being forced to choose, and the
yeah,
being forced to choose is if you're not for us, you're against us. Well, it's like, well, can
yeah,
I?
totally.
can I have it both ways? I mean, can I
Hmm.
be, you know,
Yeah.
fiscally conservative and maybe socially? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing, and that's the challenge that we face even being Christians. Christians do the exact same
Yeah.
thing. Christians,
Oh,
Christians do the exact same
heck
thing, and
yes.
there's just no
Hundred
room. I mean, I said in
percent.
a room full of pastors once, and
Yeah.
I may lose some viewers right here, you know,
That's
but I
okay.
said it in a room full of pastors
Do it
recently.
early before we have a lot of them.
Yeah, there you go. I said because the topic of hell, which is probably something we should get into one day, because it would just be really, really fun.
Ooh, I'm
I,
in.
I don't do text debates very good, but people text me every once in a while. So tell me what you think about this, and I'm like, that
Oh, that's always
this
fun.
is not a text
It's
conversation,
like a Facebook debate.
right?
Like,
But what I find
I
is I was sitting in this room full of pastors, and I said, listen, I don't have every single Mormon and every single LGBTQ person going to hell. Just, you know,
yeah.
first of all, it's not my, because if you have everybody that you disagree with or that you perceive is in some form of sin, doesn't
Hmm.
that put people that are struggling with pornography, drinking, and every other thing, has that got them burning in eternal flames as well
Yeah,
too? I
there's
mean, it's
no.
very
Yeah.
it's very complicated to draw the line
Hmm.
biblically or theologically,
Yeah.
if you have any working exegetical knowledge of Romans at all,
Yeah.
right? It's very
Yeah.
difficult to draw, I think, what evangelicals have drawn the line. So the problem is we do that in the
Hmm.
church the same way that the media does it. That there's
Totally.
just that you're either
Yeah.
for this or you're against this, and if you're against this, then all of a
Hmm.
sudden we have
Yeah.
this problem. It's and it
Yeah.
and I think the media narratives feed into that. They're feeding,
Hmm.
and I've heard people say it over and over again. I'm like, God, it's so true. They're feeding the divide, because the
Oh,
divide
for sure.
creates clicks. The divide
Yeah.
and those clicks create or respond to ads.
Hmm.
Those ads are revenue. So division is good for business.
Yeah. Well, what I would see happening is, say this hypothetical centrist network was created, and say like a Godfather offer was thrown at some left-wing personality who, media personality that was going to fill their own time slot, get an hour,
Right.
and but be a part of this network. And all of a sudden, the narrative comes out: alt-right network, can't believe blah 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 is going
Right.
over there. I
Right.
see a big hullabaloo being made about how, oh, I've searched my inner self and decided I actually cannot join this. Forgive
Right.
me, blah blah
Right.
blah. And then they become a bigger star for a week, by staying at their old place. And
Right.
all of a sudden they get that little following from that. But I feel like that's kind of where we're at on the left for
Right.
cancel culture type thing. It's
Right.
like they could literally be pressured away from it. And
Right.
therefore, you wouldn't really get the true progressives filling that slot. You'd
Right.
get maybe some center people, maybe a
Right.
little center left, but nowadays don't fit the mold
Don't
of what the
right.
progressives
Right.
want. And so all
Right.
of a sudden, you don't have a centrist network anymore
Well,
because the
conservatives do
left
it
people are,
too.
yeah, oh, for
Right.
sure. I'm not
Conservatives do
even
it too.
saying
I
they
mean,
don't, but they're
right. I'm just saying
more, they're willing to debate.
well, like, okay, let's take Shepard Smith. Shepard Smith
Hmm.
did not survive. Not, I don't think necessarily because of the work environment, but
Yeah.
literally the crowd
Hmm.
was screaming, "Hold it! You guys are Fox News. Why do you guys have
Yeah.
such a center guy running a show?"
Oh
The
yeah.
same thing, Greta Van Susteren back in the day. She
Hmm.
was very much a centrist thinker. She had a
Yeah.
conservative, PO, but like Neil Cavuto, which
Hmm.
technically Neil Cavuto runs a financial show, right?
Hmm.
He's got that 1 o'clock hour
Yeah.
financial show on Fox News,
Yeah.
but he does not toe the conservative or Fox
Oh
News
no.
line. And
He
I
said
think
some
what I
things that I was very surprised
right,
he got away with, honestly, in
but
those
I
times.
but I love it. I love that
Yeah.
he stayed and he's sticking it out, because
Yeah.
that's what conservatives need to be known for. Conservatives
Oh, for
need
sure.
to be known. We have to be
Yeah.
known for people that have thicker skin and can take
Yeah.
and handle
Absolutely.
and coexist with opinions
Yeah.
that do not match our own.
Well, I would say that the facts, as far as like how many people we have that do that, are on our side. Like, there's far more
Sure.
conservatives willing
Sure.
to go into hostile environments than
Sure.
vice versa. Where it's funny, where we kind of lose that gut, that spine, is actually mostly with church people, which is very disheartening.
Right.
You know,
Right.
The conservatives that go out there are usually the rougher ones, or like Ben Shapiro is a good example, but he's Jewish, and he has some very like uh, toe the line things that as a Christian, as a kingdom conservative Christian, that even I'm like, that's a little far for me, Ben, you know.
Right.
But he is willing to go into those crowds, and God bless him for it.
Yeah.
Ruben's a good example. Like, they're willing to go out into these hostile environments, but you don't see many like real like Christian people doing it, who would say represent
Right.
you and me well. And so
Right.
that also gives the impression that we're all like hard right. Now Ruben's a bad example
Right.
of like a hard right person, because
Right.
obviously he's homosexual. He
Right.
has some left leanings. He would probably consider himself more libertarian,
Yeah.
but and he's very intellectual
Well,
and
he's
biting.
a man without a, like we've talked about before. He's a man without a home
Mhm.
now,
Oh
because he
yeah,
is still quite progressive, but he's
yeah.
common sense progressive. I mean,
Hmm.
that's one thing. I listened to Eric Weinstein talk,
I like Weinstein.
and I'm just like, these guys, how they are able to. Uh, he was actually having a discussion about how he got kicked out of Harvard and why he got kicked out of Harvard, and
Hmm.
it's because literally he does not follow. He does not, follow
Yeah,
the narrative drum. He follows a
yeah,
logic drum. Jordan Peterson, same
yeah,
thing, follows the logic drum. But you
yeah.
find a lot of these guys, this is kind of what I don't like. I don't like cartoon character conservatism. I know a lot of
Oh,
people love
totally.
Charlie Kirk. I don't
Yeah.
love Charlie Kirk. I don't love
No.
Charlie Kirk. I don't love Candace Owens. I do not find them to be. I I think they would do really well on, conservative
Hmm.
CNN. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They
Well,
just
she
they
did. She went to Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro's
right.
site.
So it's kind of
Candace
one of those
Owens.
things. I don't find bullet point conservatism very
Hmm.
beneficial. They claim they have a dialogue, but
Yeah.
a lot of times when I've seen them even do their panels,
Yeah.
they wait for somebody to finish, and then they just bullet point shoot them down, and
Sure.
then just
Yeah.
kind of say next. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that appeals to the YouTube click crowd, but
Yeah.
you didn't change hearts and minds.
No. No.
You
Absolutely not.
just and I so that I don't get. So I have some friends that are really excited. Hey, Charlie Kirk's coming to my church. I'm like, so what?
Yeah. Don't know
Stay
if that's
home.
gonna help, really.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
cares? Stay home.
You're gonna get a like a just basically the meme version of conservatism,
Yeah,
with a little more facts behind it. That's really
with some facts behind
what
it.
they
Yeah.
do.
No,
Yeah, I
I'm
totally
not saying it doesn't have a
agree
place,
with
and I'm
you.
not saying they don't
Hmm.
have good things to say. I
Yeah,
just think in this day and age, the how is just as important as the what.
yeah, and I sort of agree with you. I would say I 75 to 80% agree with you. Sometimes I think some things just need to be spoken, whether
Sure.
they're nice or not. And I
I'm kind of
think
a hippie, so
that's okay. The center right hippie, which nowadays hippies would be pretty center
it's my
right.
mom. My mom would be proud of
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
But no, I agree with you though, especially in like a communication between individuals. I think the only thing I'd say is that sometimes oh, I mean, I don't want to be too cliche, but Jesus sometimes just would say stuff that would just roil everything up.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
he didn't
Yeah.
mind dropping a big truth bomb sometimes and wasn't too
Right.
concerned about people's feelings,
Right.
and then he'd like walk you out through it. Now, I'm not saying Jesus always did that, because there are some people who believe that, and that's completely wrong. Jesus
Right.
was far more, he always put relationship first, except for
Yeah.
when he knew he didn't need to. But so I think like I totally agree with you for the most part. The problem is that these people you're mentioning and alluding to, they live in that all the time, and that's just not helpful.
Yeah.
You know?
No. Well, and again, it's their version of getting clicks as well. By the way, I'm really
Yeah,
enjoying the chosen version of Jesus, aren't you? Are you enjoying the
dude,
chosen version?
it's awesome. I haven't started season 2 yet, but yeah, it's
Oh,
awesome.
okay,
It's
hold it.
I
Okay,
don't know.
this is not a spoiler. I'm just telling you. Best line. Best line. God, I don't even want to ruin it for you.
I already saw you what you tweet or what you wrote on
Oh,
Facebook. I'm guessing
best
that's the
line.
one.
I
Yeah,
even
that's so
show my
good.
daughter. They're
Yeah.
standing out in front, and he says, "I only have 5 rooms." And the guy says, "He goes, one of the rooms is haunted by the spirit of my dead grandmother." And Jesus is like, "Oh, I'll take that one."
That's
I
awesome.
hit the floor. I was like, "Oh, this is the best thing
I
ever."
know.
And
That's
then,
amazing.
Jesus, he's a winker. He looks at
Mm,
people and
yeah.
it literally just shows me. To me, I just resonated with it so well. I mean, you would just have a hard time convincing me that Jesus to some degree wasn't like that, or that the
Yeah.
Father
Oh,
isn't very much
totally.
like that. That he's
Absolutely.
that compassionate, he's that empathetic, and I think
And
that
playful.
yeah, and just I mean,
Hmm. Yeah. I love it.
when he's looking at him, he's like totally scolding the disciples, and then he looks at him after he's done, totally scolding them, and they're kind of hanging their
Yeah.
heads and like, I'm sorry, and then he's like, call down fire. That was your best idea today. That's what you were gonna do. Call down fire. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't sound as smart when you say it that way. He's like, yeah, really, really wasn't. I mean, it's just like that's
Yeah.
exactly. I would think
I
that's
love.
exactly how
Yeah.
we would do it. But I mean, that's. I think part of the thing is if we as conservatives would one educate ourselves, right?
Hmm. Oh,
Not not
majorly.
not just get talking points.
Yep.
And I think
Majorly.
I'm guilty of that sometimes. I get
I
some
think we
talking points
all
because
are, because
it
sometimes the talking point just rises to the surface and
right,
blurps out. Even as
right,
Christians, we do it. It's just whether or not we can walk it out. Now, I'm more educated as a Christian, just being a son of a pastor and
right,
then being a pastor myself and
right.
studying the Bible more than I've studied anything else in my life. So it's a lot easier to control myself on that. But
Sure.
it still happens. Sometimes you still say
Yeah.
the thing when you're just like, I need to expound on that, or
Yeah.
shouldn't have
Well,
started there.
I I think we get lazy. We get late, and the thing is
Yeah.
again, you're
Or
trying to engage
annoyed.
in a dialogue.
Annoyed is the hardest
Or
thing.
annoyed. Yeah. I
Yeah, you
yeah,
just get
I
frustrated.
I
You're just like,
used
screw it, I'll blow it all up.
I compare. I mean, the pendulum is this. I don't know if I ever told you. I used to the sign waivers, everyone's going to hell.
Oh
Those
yeah,
guys. I don't know if they have them
yeah,
in Texas.
totally.
It's probably too
Yeah.
hot. But here we have them.
Well,
And
East Texas, I think we have some,
oh
but
yeah, yeah, you had like entire
East
cities I
Texas
think
gets more
dedicated to them.
conservative. There's even dry counties still in East Texas,
Oh, serious?
so you get a little more. Yeah, you get a little more of that there, but
No,
I don't really
well,
see it too much in Austin.
we had them here. They actually marched in a parade once, because everyone has
Oh,
to march. Everyone gets the freedom to march in the parade. So the what the people ended up doing, the coordinators of the parade just had them go first, and then
hmm.
held the parade back for like 5 minutes,
Oh wow, oh my
and
gosh,
let them just go do their thing,
wow,
and they got the bullhorn and
yeah,
everybody's going to hell thing. And so the parade ends in this carnival in our community. And long story short, my wife and I are walking. We're walking with some friends,
wow,
and I saw them, and they're doing the
okay,
bullhorn thing.
hmm.
And I went, I'm going. And my wife's like, okay. She peels off, goes get cotton candy or something like that. And I just walk up to him, and I'm just like, so tell me what this is all about. And we got into this conversation
Wow,
about, you know, judgment and whatnot. And at one point, the guy was like this close to my face, and he's like, I told him something, because he was some of his scriptures, we are enemies of God, and I'm like, it's so not true.
wow,
Scripture says we were enemies of God in our mind. We created God as an enemy.
yeah,
Adam
yeah,
created God as an enemy. We're still doing the exact same thing
hmm,
today. That's what we're doing. We're
sure,
creating God as an
sure,
enemy. God is not your enemy, and He's not those people's enemy. Your scripture is all backwards. Let's not do this
yeah, yeah,
anymore. And he
yeah.
just gets in my face, and he's like, he got really close to me. He's like, "You're under a spirit of deception." And I went,
Oh wow,
"Why are you so close to my face?" And then this guy starts yelling at me, and I looked at him, and I said, "Do you want to talk about this, or do you want to just yell at me?" And he's like, "I'm declaring the truth." And I said, "I'll tell you the truth, and I'm going to tell you the truth about your father, but you're going to tell me everything
mm,
about your relationship with your dad right after you tell me your truth." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Your
wow,
dad, the dad you've never seen a day in your life, and you are furious about it."
mm,
And he's like
wow,
looking at me like, "How do you know this?" And then he goes, "Well, I'm not mad about it." And I'm like, "Well, that's debatable." And and
wow.
and the guy looks at me. He's like, "Are you some kind of prophet or something?" I said, "No, I'm just Sean. But we all hear God." How did I get off on this? But anyway, so then the
I don't
head
know. I'm
leader,
liking it though. Keep
the head
going.
leader saw it all, and he cleared him out. He's like, "Uh oh, we're
Yeah.
losing
Wow.
ground here." He cleared him out. But it was great because then I got to pray for the head leader. We got to have a conversation. Got to pray
Wow.
for him.
That's
Gave him a
awesome, man.
a word of knowledge, and and had a word for his wife too. The exact same thing. And he's like freaking out, And and
Wow.
literally, as my wife is standing at the top of the hill, like 20 minutes later, like, when are you going to be done? We came to a carnival to have fun with our friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, honey, I am having fun. This is a great ride,
I
and it
am.
doesn't cost anything. And as I'm walking away, he gave me his card, and he's like, don't forget to call me. And I'm like, you
Wow.
must stop yelling.
Oh
But
my gosh.
but my point was, before I got in that story, my point was that being able to be willing to have
Hmm.
difficult conversations in the face of
Hmm.
somebody who's probably going to outright lie to you, like
Yeah.
the media. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who, that unfortunately, their sole source comes from this particular pocket of media.
Hmm. Yeah.
They know those people, they trust those people, they've got to
Yeah.
be telling the truth. But anybody who does even a halfway 4 foot deep dive into the pool is going to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, that literally, it was like what you were talking about, earlier before we went on the show today, was it's it's interesting how Donald Trump was accused of building a wall, and
Hmm.
it's called building a wall, and it was just separatist and just terrible, and how dare
Yeah.
you. But now the Biden administration is basically building a wall, but the wording is filling in the
Filling
gaps.
in the gaps. Yeah.
So I was like, hmm, what's the difference
Oh yeah.
between building a wall and filling in the gaps? The answer is
Yeah.
nothing.
Or the kids in
The answer, yeah,
cages. It's now temporary
right.
shelters, and
Temporary
they're
shelters,
they're
right,
like 10 times more full than they
right.
were under Trump. It's
Yes.
insane.
And
It's
how do you?
insanity.
And these kids are being sent across,
Oh, it's
and
terrible. Yeah.
but the administration won't let any press in. So
Yeah.
you have all the representatives, congressmen, and senators going
Hmm.
down. And I actually
Yeah.
heard of an interview. One of the senators was actually interviewing some of the children, saying, "Well, how much does it cost for you guys to get, these
Hmm.
coyotes?" And they're like, "Get this. This is what's crazy." They said, "It doesn't cost us anything. We don't have money. We work it off once we get
Mm.
across."
Wow.
So
That's
they're
crazy.
admitting
Yeah.
to saying that they are going to work for the coyotes and the MS-13 once they come into the country.
Yeah.
That's
That's terrifying.
insane.
That is so insane. And they're not doing anything about it.
Right, they're not doing anything
Like
about it.
it's
But the
but the
narrative is,
media,
we
yeah,
got this. And
exactly.
they wouldn't call
Oh
it
yeah.
a, and it was, I mean,
Crisis.
before it wasn't even
Yeah.
close to what it is
Yeah.
now. It was not, under Trump, it's a crisis. Now
Oh
it
yeah.
was a situation.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Jen Jen Psaki has already proved. I don't think Jen Psaki. What date is this? This is the 8th, April 8th. I think Jen Psaki gets sacked in about
Maybe.
5 months. No,
I don't
I
know
don't
if
even think
like you
she can.
can field those lies. I don't know if anybody
Yeah,
can do it well,
I don't think
because
she's
like,
going to be able to survive her own sass, though. She is
yeah, you're
so
probably
snippy.
right.
I think at
Oh,
some
she is.
point,
Yeah.
if she doesn't get control of her, because she's
Yeah.
snippy,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
she's even snipping at the mainstream media journalists,
Oh
like
yeah.
basically
Yeah.
kind of slapping, hey, you can't ask that question, you know
Well, did you see any of
and
the Biden press conference? Like how staged it was?
oh, you
How
mean
he
the
was
Biden
like,
show?
yeah,
Yeah, it was a
it's
great show.
just it's crazy. The Yeah, I mean, we could just go off on the media all day, but the problem is,
I think we did. I think it's we did today. I think
well, and I
we're probably
think
not
to
going to get
me,
to our second topic today. We'll get to that
so
next week.
the biggest problem though is like it's the biggest problem even in all this. It's still not the media; it's the people who enable them to get away with it.
Sure.
And it's the intellectual laziness is what I think it is. It's just this comfort level where there was a generation. So my grandpa is a good example of this, and I love him. He still just watches the news,
Yeah.
and so he's very conservative. And him and I agree far more than we disagree. But it's still just a very like I'm watching the news, and he wouldn't even know where to start to look for news outside of that. So there's
Right.
those people doing that, and then probably their kids who are raised watching just the nightly news. My parents watch the news. They probably moved on to like Fox News and stuff. Like so it's a little bit different than just watching the nightly news on ABC.
Right. Right.
But they're still getting that narrative, and it's like our age. What baffles me is the people our age who say 45 and under, like the millennials and stuff, with the internet. There's no excuse not to know more. There really isn't. Or
Right.
to at least like go seeking past media narrative.
Right.
And I just, for me, and it's, I kind of touched on it a little bit last week. I really just don't understand how anybody could just keep being proven wrong over and over again and yet still be trusted so much, and like
Right.
vehemently so. It's like
Right.
a lot of these people, it's like you counter them on something that, CNN said a year ago, and you're like, yeah, and now they're saying this, and they'd be like, well, the information changed, and that's like their only excuse, and they'll
Right.
be like,
Right.
but we trust them still.
Right.
And it's just like, wow, that kind of just sticking your feet in the ground. And speaking of a spirit deception, that's really all I can think it is. I don't think the human mind naturally is there. I think there's just like a lull to sleep of,
Right.
and it's a spiritual thing. But like you said, it also happens in the church, where it's like a religious spirit can come in,
Right.
or um, so all that to say, just that's the thing that baffles me the most is the lack of intellectual curiosity, the lack of intellectual integrity to
Right.
go after these things. Like all these intellectuals we were talking about, the Weinsteins, they're still like Brett and Eric, they're still very left, but they're
Right.
very open to
Right.
discussion, and they
Yeah.
have real reasons why they believe what they do. Like they can
Yeah.
defend it, and they can talk in circles. Like I wouldn't have my opinion changed by being around one of them because I know why I believe what I believe, but I
Right.
would not want to debate one of them because
Right.
they'd make me look stupid just because
Well,
they
and
have
you
such a
might
way of with words.
come away with a greater respect though for why some,
I already
because
do. Yeah.
yeah, I honestly think some
Hmm.
particular narratives that people have, that's why I'm saying
Yeah.
I don't like, to kind of maybe not overdo it, but like the Charlie Kirks or the Candace Owens, I don't think they do us any
Hmm.
favors
Yeah.
because they cartoon, they kind of animate
Hmm.
narratives.
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro does it too, but he's actually saying very factually smart stuff while he's kind of
Yeah.
acting like a cartoon character,
Yeah.
and it's so that's the challenge that, if you have real, like, I'm really excited to see Jordan Peterson
Hmm.
reemerge because I
Yeah.
really do love
He's
how he
already
talks.
starting to. Yeah.
Yeah, he's starting to.
Although, did you
Oh
see
yeah,
what
because
happened in the
they're
comics?
already yeah they're already hammering him.
Yeah,
They're
they
already
turned him into
hammering
the
him.
Red Skull
Yeah,
in
Red
Captain
Skull.
America.
I'm like,
He's a
see,
Nazi now
he's
because
already
he's a free
he's
thinker.
they're already afraid of him. He's
Yeah,
not even 100% yet, and he's
he's
his
not even a
podcast.
right. He's not even a right wing guy.
No, no, that's the
You
thing is
know.
they can't. That's it. That's any any substantive thought
Hmm.
that might have the chance
Yeah.
of converting someone over to a different way of thinking, because I
Yeah.
can assure you there is far more awakening, if you
Yeah.
want to put it that way, from a
Yeah.
progressive dead end to, okay, maybe there is something here,
Yeah.
to this. And I think that's why a lot of it is too, they're afraid, like they fear Dave Rubin because
Hmm.
Dave Rubin was entrenched in the Young Turks
Oh
LGBT
yeah.
community. So they
Yeah.
need to destroy him because
Yeah.
they cannot allow him to
Yeah.
exist
Yeah.
in in the conservative tent for people to actually say,
Yeah.
wow, 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 wow,
Yeah.
and also, but it's interesting because the church does have it too. We have a vocal minority,
Hmm.
extremely progressive wing, but they
Oh
are a
yeah.
vocal minority.
Well, not even just progressive. I mean, think about just like some, like there's some theological doctrines that are so like strictly adhered to in like a militaristic way that have just it's clearly untrue, especially now, like as now we have so much history behind us. We have
Right,
so many ways of studying the Bible, so we can't blame a bad translation anymore.
right,
Like we can't all say like, sorry guys, but the King James version's a really bad translation, just putting it out
right,
there. But
right,
we
right,
can't blame that that's the only translation we had, and so
right,
that's why we thought what we thought. Like
right,
we have to, but there are people who still hold to some of these things that is just really bad doctrine,
Right.
But it's treated, and they are entrenched in it. They're entrenched the way a progressive is entrenched in
Right.
something, or a far right conservative's entrenched in something. And what I think is more feared, and just going back to what you were saying, I think what's more feared than like a conservative thought getting lodged in somebody's head, what's more feared is the actual chink in the armor that just creates
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
free thinking at all.
Yes. Yeah.
Just to like, oh, I can actually think through something. So
Right.
like Ruben, he is like, if we were talking 20 years ago, he'd still be considered more left, probably,
Sure.
or at
Sure.
least
Sure.
very center.
Very
Like
right. Yeah.
but here's one thing Ruben does, and Tim Pool's another good example of this. Even though they both still consider themselves like liberals, but they're on the right now because there's no room for them to be free thinkers on the other side. The one thing they share that I think binds all conservatives together in a political sense is they believe the Constitution should just be held up as it is,
Right.
and that if you want to change it, you go through the process of changing it, as with that the founders put in place. So they're like, Tim Pool especially now is pretty much a strict constitutionalist. And even though he has all these ideas that are more left wing and stuff, he's like, but I want to do it the constitutional way.
Right.
And
Right.
that is just like that even that idea right there just blows up the whole progressive, manifesto
Right.
of how to
Right.
get things done or do things, because the Constitution, other than Jesus, is their big enemy. They have two big
Right.
enemies: Jesus
Right.
and the Constitution.
Right.
And so, but that thought alone makes them conservative now, just
I well,
believing that the Constitution is a good document.
I think if someone was able to just, I mean, I love kind of the concept of challenge everything. That's kind
Yeah,
of something I do. I'm
sure.
not afraid. I'm not afraid. And I obviously we do it in different environments. If somebody
Mhm.
we are having a discussion with, we realize, like I said, I've had some conversations this week that have been a little bit more challenging. But if it's like I have relationship with you, I know that
Yeah,
we're gonna get to the end of this, even if we don't
sure.
agree.
Yeah.
We're still gonna be friends.
Mhm.
Um, you know that 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 creates a freedom in me, and I think I was kind of raised to think that way anyway. I was kind of
Mhm.
raised to be like, ask questions. And so I've asked a lot of questions, and I've always been an asker of questions, even, in my young journey of discovering, theology.
Yeah.
In the last 3 years of my life, I have had 5 years of my life, actually, I've asked more significant, profound questions of people that I trusted, because if I would ask
Mhm.
those same questions of people that I don't necessarily have a relationship, they'd be terrified of that. So I've always found myself not 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 being afraid of having difficult conversations if I could trust um,
Mhm.
the person or the environment that what I'm having. And like I said, I've been
Yeah, yeah.
in the last 5 years, I've been asking a lot of really tough questions that would be
Mhm.
great questions to have with people I trust. But if it's somebody, but I wouldn't just ask anybody this, because it would just scare them. Like, oh, Sean, are you,
Yeah,
what are you
yeah.
talking about? And it is difficult. But I guess I would say, to kind of to wrap us up tonight, and maybe let's
Mhm.
just kind of close it this way. This is what I would say to anybody who's listening. I- You know, I've been teaching my daughter to do magic eye.
Mhm.
Magic eye is that thing where you stare at the painting long
Oh
enough
yeah,
that you
dude.
you actually yeah, magic eye is great. And I
I can
found
never
this
do it.
program where you
I
could
was
actually
one of
create
those
your own.
people.
You
I
can't
was
do
one of those
magic eye?
people.
Oh, I
I
can
dude,
show
I
you.
have tried a million times. I think
Yes.
once I started to see something, but I
And then
stared.
you
I did
lost it.
the focus out. I don't know what it is, man. Maybe I'm just too literal. I don't
No,
know.
it's not. It's what it is that it is literally allowing your eyes to lose focus,
Yeah,
to
relax. Yeah, I've
to
done that.
relax and to lose focus, and then all of a sudden you're able to see what's actually there. And
Hmm.
I found this program where I could start writing things, and my daughter
That's
was
really
really
cool.
struggling with doing magic eye, so I wrote her name in the magic eye, and I didn't tell her that it was there. And
Cool.
she showed it to one of her friends, and her friend saw it right away, and it just bugged the tar. And so my daughter looked at it, and at one point she's like, "Oh yeah, I think I see it." And I'm like, yeah, you don't see it." She's like, Is it this?" I'm like, "No, it's not that." She's like, "Okay, Dad." But one time she was showing it to one of her friends, and as she was handing it to her friend, She saw it and she instantly called
Oh,
me. And she's like, "Dad, it's my name. You wrote my name." And it was just this moment that she was kind of just, wasn't fixed on it.
yeah,
She
yeah.
just kind of caught this glimpse of it. And I
Mm,
think one of the things is as we are hearing these, you know, statistics coming our way or medical
mhm.
science, you have to create an environment within yourself to say, okay, listen, I can hear this, but
Sure.
I'm not afraid to challenge it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not afraid to listen to my own spirit and go,
Yeah.
I don't know, something's not sitting right with me, or consider the source and
Mhm.
not be afraid to hear uh other differing points of view. I seek out differing points of view,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't just watch Fox News and I don't just read Epic Times,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
I kind of span the and again, we have cartoon characters on all sides. So I guess that
Oh,
that'd
yeah.
kind of be my encouragement to people is
Mhm.
don't be afraid of your own thoughts.
Yeah.
You give
Totally.
yourself permission to be like, I don't know, and
Mhm.
and then you'd be amazed if you relax a little bit and you're just like, okay, I'm just, I'm just going to kind of run this down a little bit. I think that, like what you said, free thinking, that's what free thinkers do. That's what
Mhm.
makes them
For sure.
great is
Absolutely.
they're not handcuffed to an ideology
Yeah.
that literally can be so profoundly powerful it thinks for them.
Mhm. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah, it's funny. Um, and I I have some I want to jump on with that, but I was also thinking something you said earlier. I, I want to say that I do think the cartoon characters have one thing that is can be helpful. Say like the Candace Owens, the Charlie Kirks. The one thing that can be helpful with them is they can reinforce a belief in a way that can be helpful sometimes. Say somebody who's already there but doesn't really know why they believe what they believe.
Right, sure.
Sometimes that person can present that in a good way. I think of like, so for me, Rush Limbaugh, like I loved Rush. I really
Right,
did. And I didn't
right,
even listen to him in the last 10 years, really.
right.
But I listened to him a lot from 2003 to 2007, 2008,
Sure.
something like that. And then my dad would listen to him when I was younger. But listening to Rush, it he would because he wasn't afraid to tackle ideas, he wasn't afraid to answer questions, and he had a way. He was just so brilliant. He would take you on a journey, and when you came out of it, it was kind of like, wow, now I kind of understand why I believe what I believe, or I'd never heard it said like that before. And Rush, I mean, I don't think, I mean, he was on the air so long, so maybe it is quite a few. But say on a day to day basis, he probably didn't change many minds. You know,
Sure.
he was very much his own corner.
Sure.
But for conservatives, he educated a whole lot of people. And I
Yeah.
think we're seeing that now, that we're seeing people rise up in the Republican Party and other places that have a stronger voice than would have been before Rush, you know.
Sure.
So I think there's some value there, but if we're strictly talking about like trying to reach across the aisle, yeah,
Right.
that's not
Well, I agree
valuable.
with you. The bullet points are good, but at some point you have to be substantive.
I think it's more
If
the
you're trying to change hearts and minds, you got to be substantive.
I think it's more the yeah, I think it's more the attitude that is
Yeah.
the issue than
Right.
the yeah.
Right.
So anyways, I just wanted to say that. So cuz I know we probably have people listening who love that. And I will say I think Candace Owens is a brilliant woman, and I do
Sure.
occasionally like there's been a few times I know why you're saying what you say and I totally agree
Right.
with you.
Yeah.
But I also
Candace,
feel
don't
like
come get me. Don't leave me.
no.
Don't hurt
But
me.
there's
Candace,
also a
don't hurt me.
couple
She could hurt
times,
me.
yeah. There's a couple times has presented very articulate arguments for certain things. And it's also nice to just see a black woman who's a free thinker and very
Sure.
confident in herself. So,
It'll be interesting to
but
see
all that
what
to
her
say,
this new platform, because now she's kind of in a medium long form
yeah,
show.
sure,
What that'll be like, as opposed to getting in
yeah,
a Twitter war with Cardi B,
or
so,
AOC,
you know,
yeah, and that it's true. I mean, she does play that social media part very well
she
now,
does.
and I wonder. I think there are other cartoon characters who are not as intelligent as Candace, and so we'll see if she has
Oh,
range. She's
sure.
also very young, you know.
Milo
So,
Yiannopoulos is Milo
oh
Yiannopoulos is
man,
now where he belongs
did
in.
you see he came out not gay now?
Yeah, that's shocking.
Isn't that crazy?
No,
Like that was
no,
an
you
interesting
didn't see that
story.
coming.
No, because he was pretty flaming.
Sure. No, no. Well, again, that's what
But I
I
didn't
when
follow Milo very closely,
yeah,
so
when I stare into people's eyes, I'm like,
yeah.
mm-mm, no, no.
Which
It's
made yeah,
he's playing a part, you know. I mean, and
yeah,
I'm not saying maybe he wasn't, you know. I'm not gonna. I don't know. We weren't pals. We didn't hang out. But I'm just saying.
yeah,
So when someone says, you know, hey, Milo Yiannopoulos came out gay, I'm like, yeah, okay,
yeah. That was interesting. I don't know.
next. Yeah.
He was talk about a cartoon character.
Right.
He
Right.
had his 6 months of fame, and
Yes.
he was all over, and then he was gone.
Right. Yeah. It was
But
like,
anyway, so to redirect, I
yeah,
just, but yeah,
we
I
get
wanted to.
there.
I did want to
Wow.
say that
Have
there is
hope, people.
value. I
There
did want to
is.
just say
There
that there
is.
is some value there, and because I just, from my own personal experience, they helped reinforce some things for me, some of those
Sure.
characters, and then as I matured, I also grew out of that. But I I would say that a lot of those beliefs, even though they've matured and I've gotten more depth to them, very few of them have changed. And
Sure.
I think that was helpful in the moment to have that reinforcement for me. And,
Yeah.
it might not have been so messy, or it might have been messier on my journey
I
later.
I think
Um,
conservative bullet points fit in the same category as the two-question test at the county fair.
yeah, right.
You know, they,
Or like personality tests.
they,
Yeah.
the two-question test at the county fair, you know, it's always my favorite. It's these people who sit in that awkward booth and they're like, "Are you going to heaven?" That's like the big sign across the top, and the lady holding a booklet. Can I just ask you two questions? You know, and
I have never heard of this. Are you
oh,
serious?
it could be a
No.
Washington thing. Yeah, no, and all it
Wow.
is it's Christian bullet points basically,
Progressive
and
Washington has a very
and
strange side of
yes,
things.
and you leave the interaction either saved if you say the prayer or
Hmm.
really frustrated, but it's okay because you wash it down with some cotton candy. That's
I was
just
gonna say, do they
the next booth over.
if you say
So
no,
it's
do
like
they drop you into
you're
the water?
yeah, it's like you're going to hell, but let me buy your cotton candy. See you in hell. Enjoy your
Wow.
cotton candy. You know,
This
it's
is
yeah,
wild to me.
yeah. So you've never heard of the two-question test?
I have
Oh,
not, no,
Paul,
and
it's the
I've been
worst.
around, man. I've been in
Oh,
small
it's the worst.
towns. I've lived in small town California, small town Texas, small town North Carolina.
Yeah, well,
But
that's you haven't it's because you haven't lived in progressive evangelicalism in
no,
its most politest
I
fear
feel like I've been
tactics.
very blessed and sheltered in a way. Because even though
Yeah,
my dad was Episcopalian priest, okay, but he was spirit filled and he was very like just I don't know, he was just very open minded.
yeah.
He was
Comment below
hardcore
if you ever got
conservative.
stopped in the two-question test before. And what did you
That
answer?
is wild. I've never heard of that. That is the craziest thing. I tell you what, man, we Christians can do some really
Oh
dumb
my
things.
God. It's like it's like just imagine if Kirk Cameron was at your county fair. That's what it's like right
Man.
there, you know.
And I say this with all the love to my Christian brothers and sisters in the world. I am very critical of the church and many times and have been in my lifetime, my career, and all in love, trying to build us back up, not to tear us down. But um, but man, I wonder how much worse I would be if I had been exposed to stuff
Right.
like that.
It was great. I mean, it was true though, because the booth was always set up next to a lemonade stand or, you know, popcorn or something
That's the
like
way to
that. So
do
if
it,
you were
man.
going to hell, you could get something to eat right
That
afterwards.
sounds kind of like the South, is what I
It's
think.
a little bit more.
Sweet
So,
treats.
well,
So okay,
yeah,
so I want to talk just to finish this up, close this out.
sure.
We always want to end on hope, and so we've had our
Yes,
big discussion. We've
yes.
covered a lot of stuff,
You,
and I just want to say that I am actually very hopeful about this area because I feel like the old media is dying. And but what I mean by
yeah,
the
I
old
agree. I
media
agree.
is, yeah, the media controlled by elites, that we have a thought and you're going to share our thought because we gave it to you. I think that is dying. And I think it's actually rapidly dying. I feel like Trump was their last stand. Because if you remember, And if our listeners remember, before Trump, there was already kind of a death knell being sounded over traditional media,
For sure. For sure.
newspapers and all that. And then Trump came along, and all of a sudden their ratings shot back up and
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
and kind of gave them a breath of life. But I also think that it's funny, the thing they hated so much, the thing they wanted to destroy, was also the thing keeping them alive.
They needed. Yeah.
And yep, and that's going away. And so, even if they never fully go away, if CNN is never fully defunded or never reforms, and MSNBC and Fox News, if none of them ever fully go away, their influence and power is going to be very low now, and we'll start thinking of them on the terms of like a PBS. Like
Right.
it's
Right.
there, but the only person who listens to it is, or what was NPR, the most boring
Right.
station on earth. I'm like.
Well, I agree with you, because I think there's a lot of people like like James O'Keefe at Project Veritas. I mean, his latest
He
target
is
is actually
fantastic.
the Babylon Bee, which is more conservative, but he's challenging them for
Yeah.
he actually got in on one of their conference calls. It's very awkward. You should watch the video. It's very awkward
I
because
cannot wait.
the conference call is actually happening and he's just sitting in the background, and then all of a sudden he starts talking in the middle of the meeting.
Wow.
And it's like, and the guy's just like, okay, well, I guess and he's calling him out for being basically right-wing conservative propagandist. But he's also, retracto, everybody's doing these retract. So I think that there are people that are starting to develop a hunger for, I want to be given something to think about. I don't want to be told what to think.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the media used to be. And so yeah, I'm with you. I am absolutely hopeful and excited, but I also think that it's going to take people like what we're talking about to demand that, to almost demand and say, listen, I don't want, and you have to demand it from our own too. You have to demand it from conservative sides, and we have to be able to demand it and say, no, I do not want you thinking for me. And the only way that we can do that is with our dollars. So, or our attention span. So, hey, congratulations everybody for actually making it to the very end of episode 2 of Way Overthinking It. And like I said, remember, we announced
we didn't
the
even
contest.
Get to our second and third topics,
I know.
So
it's
we
not
are
going to
definitely living up to our name.
We are way overthinking it. But if you can make it to the 10th episode, remember, if you can pass that 10 podcast test, we will send you a Way Overthinking It t-shirt.
Will we just make it a 2-question test?
No, it's going to be it'll be a 10-question test, 10 episodes. What did you glean from every episode? What life-changing, transformative thought did you get? And you will win a Way Overthinking It t-shirt signed just by Paul, because I have terrible handwriting.
I thought your daughter was going to make it. So that's
it's true.
That's a lot of shipping.
She's
good.
In that. And you have to pay the shipping. So hey, so thank you guys so very much.
Signed and back on.
Yes. So we will see you next week. I am Sean.
Yes. I'm Paul, and thank you guys. We love doing this. This is super fun for us too. Hopefully it's almost as fun for you guys.
So enjoy Way Overthinking It.
We'll see you next week.